Hey, welcome into the REVO Church Podcast. I'm Jamie. I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm so excited that you clicked on the video and you joined us. This is episode 3 of our podcast, where we are looking at how you can invest in the next generation. So 2 weeks ago, you heard from the dads. We had some of the dadliest dads that have ever dadded, apparently, on the podcast, and they were talking about how they have dadded, and it was a great time. And then the next week, we had some moms on the couch, and they were talking all about what it is to be a mom, how to pour into your kids to serve the next generation. And what was really cool was they were dropping knowledge where dads were just dad jokes. So, it happens, it works. But they were there, they were serving. And so if you missed either of those episodes, do me a favor, pause the video. We don't care. Go watch those videos and then come back to this one. But today I'm joined by two of maybe the hardest working rWorld volunteers you'll ever meet. Two of the, when I say they're like experts in the field of serving children, I don't think that's even slightly an exaggeration. They serve hard, they love kids, they love to have kids see Jesus. And so I'm excited to have them on here. I'll give you a second just to introduce yourself.
So I am Amy. I have 4 kids. I have Madeline, who's 14, Joseph, who's 12, Elijah, who is 10, and Zulea, who is 9. And then I have Josh, who is my husband, and it's the missions pastor. And I've been doing kids ministry for 20 years. And so
Experts.
I have been at all gamuts of volunteer roles to staff roles. So that's what I do.
Yeah, I'm Haylee. I am the rWorld leader at Walkertown campus, and my husband John helps me with that. I'm also an instructional coach and elementary school teacher for the last 10 years. I've also volunteered in all the capacities in all the churches. I also have a 6-year-old Ivy and a 2-year-old Adeline.
I love that. So like we said, we are going to be talking all about how to pour into the next generation. And this is going to be with the rWorld volunteers. So when I think about, serving and seeking the next generation, my first thing is I'm always curious, like, what caused you to get into serving the next generation, of serving kids? And so, Amy, I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your heart of why you like to serve with kids.
So originally, when I started when I was 20, I was in college, and I was getting, my major was middle school math education. But my heart was for kids with special needs. And so I helped develop a special needs program at the church that I was in Raleigh. And so during that, I also, as my job, I was someone that went into homes and helped families with their children on varying different levels. And so that was where my heart started, was awesome. I just wanted kids to know Jesus, whether they were where they were at.
I love that.
Yeah. For me, similar in that my degree is in teaching and helping kids in elementary school. But also a big part of my life change and the trajectory of my life being what it has been because of the people who poured into me at a young age, specifically in youth group in middle school. And so wanting to return that favor to other kids and knowing the impact it has on kids when you don't have that support system, and someone to guide you towards Jesus.
Yeah, I know we've talked at the church a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the midst of summer serve right now, where we have volunteers jumping in, testing the waters for serving. And we talked about the stats of so many people come to faith by the time, I believe it's like 12 years old. They've already decided. And by the time they're like 18, that decision is almost solidified. And most people, there is people that get saved post 18 as adults. But for a lot of times we see that, your impact starts at a young age. And so I just love seeing and hearing that y'all are like, I just have a passion for kids and I want to see them grow. And so I know that when we talk about that, there's kids are like sponges. They pick up things like that. They will hear something and repeat it. And so working with kids so much, working in rWorld, seeing just the different impact, I'd love to know, is there anything you've noticed from kids that they start to pick up from their parents? Hopefully good things, but things that you see that the parents are impacting in a positive manner that that the kids are then repeating and, following?
So in our house, what I've noticed is, so we always made church not an option.
Mm.
And so it wasn't optional. And then when we moved back to the United States, we literally moved back, and the first weekend I was serving in rWorld at REVO. And it became the routine. So our kids, back when we only had one campus, we had, when we would do baptisms, they would only have one service, and our kids would cry. My kids would just bawl. And it's just one of those things where they were expecting for us to serve. They were expecting to be there for two services. And that was just their norm. And so literally for them, not going to church is weird. Like, why wouldn't you go to church? Like, that's just what we do as a family. And I've watched that through many families, especially at South Fork, where that's the routine. And as the kids have gotten older, then they have started serving themselves in rWorld, because once again, it's just what we do.
Yeah.
As a thing.
No, I like that. I like the idea of like, this is what we do as a family.
Yeah.
Haley, what about you? What have you noticed?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to priorities, like Amy was talking about. Priorities in attending church, but prioritizing serving, prioritizing reading the scripture, prioritizing praying. In my own family, we have used some of the REVO resources, like some prayer cards, and we keep them on the center of our table. And so when we eat dinner together as a family, we use those cards to guide what are we going to pray about. And now we don't have to lead it. Like my 6-year-old can say, okay, what are we going to pray about today? I'd like to pray about this today. And so seeing that play out from the parents being intentional and prioritizing some of those disciplines, and it now transferring to our children. And I just think, it comes down to prioritizing and seeing that play out in your kids.
I like that. Yeah, I get to serve I don't serve in rWorld, but I get to serve with the student ministry.
Yeah.
And so what's really cool about serving with the student ministry is I get to see the influence of the parents from when they were young and starting to instill that. So then a lot of the students are, they're coming up through rWorld. So I get to see the influence of the parents, the influence of the rWorld volunteers and what they're learning. And then to see them then come in and they already have a foundation built is just, that's just super cool, because then you're not like trying to just build everything in the air. You're just, all right, let's take it and let's expand on it. And so that's always just a really cool thing to see.
And I think it's a misnomer that these things look like you would see on TV or something. So oftentimes, like when we do our family devotion time, it's sometimes me literally having to rotate to not look at the family, because I can't handle the fact that my youngest is like messing and doing everything. Does that make sense? Because it's at night, and it's like, so it's like people, I think, idolize this time of when you do family devotion time, that is this like sunshine and rainbows. And sometimes it's not. And sometimes it turns into, well, with Elijah, a theological debate on whether or not the children's book is correct or not. But that's Elijah. If you know him, you understand that.
He's testing your knowledge.
He is. He's constantly testing that knowledge. But I think one thing that we have done that is neat is, on the way to school, we have a Bible verse for every week. And so just scripture memorization while you're waiting in that car line, and just having those conversations, making God the rhythm of your life versus just like, oh, I have to make this little special thing. So like the rhythm of doing scripture and praying at dinner table versus like having to make it some big ordeal is crucial.
I think it's the priorities. And I think like talking on that, I think there's been a problem with like, I'm a big anti-social media guy. You can look, and I do have like social media stuff. I think the last time I posted anything that wasn't like me just sharing something about church, 3 years ago, maybe more. I think what happened is so many people are seeing like, oh, family devotion time, like, and you'll see like this perfect Instagram worthy family, like sitting around with, the dad cracking open the Bible, and all the kids from like, 10 years old to like 3 are just staring like into. That doesn't happen.
No, that's not real life.
Let's be honest. But talking about that, I would love to know. So we as a church have been talking about spiritual disciplines. We dropped a whole bunch of podcasts about spiritual disciplines. I'd love to know, as rWorld volunteers, what does it look like to try to teach kids these spiritual disciplines? because I know there's a wide range for, preschoolers. It's going to look way different than the fourth and fifth graders. So I'd love for you and Haley, if you want to go, I'd love to hear just some of what, you know, you try to do, you try to instill as far as like teaching kids how to grow closer to Jesus.
Yeah, I think number one, the teacher side of me wants to come out too, is modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Modeling it, letting your kids see
Yep.
you doing it for yourself. And also just recognizing that it's not going to be perfect, like we've already talked about. But for us, especially now that Ivy's getting a little bit older, it's when we read a story at night, it's not always a fictional, fun story, but it's going to be the Bible. And Josh and Amy have been great at giving us resources for age-appropriate Bibles so that I can find stories that can explain things that I'm having a difficult time explaining to her, but this Bible does a really great job of explaining it. So modeling it, I think, is number one. Being intentional about what I'm going to use as resources and going to people who can help you find the appropriate resources is helpful. Just a fun story to share. Sometimes you don't see things come to fruition until you least expect it. But we had been reading in Genesis with Ivy, and just the other day we have a neighbor who is Hindu.
Okay.
They're from Nepal, and they were upstairs playing, and she comes downstairs and she was like, Mom, Ivanka has questions about the snake in the garden. And I was like, what snake in the garden? What are you talking about?
Wait a minute, there's a snake.
There's a snake?
Yeah,
John.
and she was like, no, in the Bible that we were reading, and she was sharing with her friend
Oh,
who
that's so
knows
sweet.
nothing about Jesus, right? So it was really, and she had so many questions. And so just modeling it, her seeing us being in the Word, and then being in the Word with her nightly in that routine, and she is naturally curious and sharing that with friends. It's just so beautiful to see. But modeling it, putting it into practice, making it a rhythm of your life.
I like that.
Yeah.
Different things that we have for parents
Yeah.
is so because we understand that parents are at all different levels
Absolutely.
in their own personal faith journey. And so if you didn't grow up in church, you oftentimes don't know where to start.
Yep.
And so we want to be able
Even if you have grown up in church, sometimes
you
you don't know where to
Yeah,
start.
sometimes you just
So,
lost. Like,
so because I did not do family devotions at home, the Bible stayed on. We didn't barely go to church. So, but in preschool, every kid gets like a sheet that they have, and then on the back it's like questions to follow up even about the lesson, and then they get a placemat so you can go at your dinner table, and it has the lessons or the stories that they do every week. And then it has them that you can draw the story out, which is how kids learn. And then it also has the memory verse for the month. So there's that. And then for elementary school, we have, because car time, you're in the car a lot.
you driving.
And so the design of these pieces of paper that are with the devotions in our city, which is the elementary room, is just additional questions to have with your family. In the car, you could do it at night or anything, but it's follow-up questions to go along with whatever they learned. And then we make them non-negotiable in our house, because I feel like reading your Bible it becomes a desire of your heart, but as a child, it's a habit that they have to learn.
Yep.
And so they are encouraged in rWorld and incentivized to do their devotions that we send home. But in our house, it is on their checklist. Like before they get to do anything for the day, they have to do their devotion. And so there are different levels of devotions depending on the age of the kid. Like the K through 1 has like a coloring sheet on the back as well. And so to do those also helps.
Oh, yeah.
Just instill the practice of spending time in the Word and it becoming their faith versus, so it's just adding to them learning that it's their faith versus us telling them that this is the faith that they should have.
Yeah, I think that's big because a lot of kids grow up and I grew up for a lot of my life. Like I went to church as a young kid and then we kind of dropped out of church for a while and then I started going back right around my senior year of high school. But for a lot of the time I would tell people like, yeah, I'm Christian, like because my family was Christian, like we claimed to be Christians as a family, and so that was what I claimed to be. But I like the idea of like, if your kid's coming to rWorld, it's saying, hey, like we're challenging you to make the faith your faith.
Yeah.
Not wait until you're middle school, high school, not wait until you're reading like huge chapter books and you can like from a young age. It's almost like the Bible says to do that.
Almost.
Like, it's almost like there's verses that talk about,
Yes.
train up a child and
Yeah.
the way he should go. And I digress. But I think about that a lot. Just the idea of like pouring into kids and helping them grow and learn, because they are sponges and they just absorb so much information. But another thing I've noticed from working with kids, and I'm sure if I've noticed this with like middle schoolers, high schoolers, and in the past I've worked with younger kids, I'm sure you guys get it all the time. And that's the questions. The what's next, what's happening, what is this, what is that, how is this? And here's what I've found out, especially with the older kids, is they are so much more open to asking questions to anyone that's not family. They are so open to asking questions about life, about beliefs, about any kind of topic you can imagine. Just like, what should they eat when they have money and they're out? Like, they're so much more open to asking friends, to asking even like leaders in a church than they are like their parents. And so, working with kids, is there any questions or topics that you feel like maybe parents need to be made aware of as being asked, even at, such a young age?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think for the younger kids, lots of like, well, who is God? What is he like? Does like just lots of questions about who God is and his character, which the theme of for our younger kids is always Jesus wants to be your friend forever. So that's great. We try to answer that question every Sunday. But lots of questions about heaven too, and what is heaven like, and how do I get there? Things like that, which is also great questions. Sin and creation, like how did the world come to be? Those are some of the themes I've heard questions about. And I'll let Amy speak about the older kids.
So some older kids in the older elementary, these might be questions that you don't think happen. But unfortunately
we
they
hope
do.
They don't.
They do.
They do.
So bullying is a big thing that the kids, in the Bible, we're supposed to love everyone. Well, how are we supposed to love someone that's constantly being mean to me?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to show them love and not, retaliate? How the whole friendship thing. And these are things that they are asking. We had to explain last year. So our kids go to public school, and they had a teacher that her pronoun was mix. And so we had to have lots of conversations about sexuality. And this was elementary school. And so the whole conversation and how to deal with that and how to talk about it, and they would bring it up and they would get frustrated and how to show love in that situation, but also truth. And then technology. These kids have a computer at their beck and call it all the time. And the kids that don't have boundaries at home, or maybe their parents think they have boundaries put up, know all the ways to get to all the things. And you think, oh, they're at school, they won't be able to show them to the other kids, but it's time and time again of images being shown in the middle of school, or they come up through ads that the teachers can't necessarily stop. And so those conversations of technology, people want to shy away from, we need to wait. Oh, that doesn't happen until really later on in life. But that's happening at 8 years old, oftentimes. And so the average age is 8 years old. And I remember just keeping those doors open of having those conversations about all these things so that your kids want to come to you when they have the questions. And so those are things that are big that are happening in conversations that are happening with the kids.
Is there anything you think parents can do to help cultivate a atmosphere where the kids can come to them with questions?
So I would say, one of the resources that we have this month out on the resource wall is conversation cards. And so the statistics say that parents only talk to your kids an hour out of the day, the most. And if you're a parent, that hour sometimes is Johnny didn't clean his room, and you're fussing at Johnny, or the teacher told me that you didn't do something, or trying to make sure they're doing their homework. And so taking the time to intentionally talk to your kids. And so slowing down and putting down your phone and just being open and learning to have a face that doesn't show all the emotions. So when your kid comes to you and says, so and so had this pop up on my screen. How am I supposed to react?
Yep.
You know, you have the face of, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can handle it. So then they come back to you the next time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think the conversation cards are great. We have used those, and I have learned things that I wouldn't have known had I not used those. And I know about things that happen in Ivy's classroom because I work there. And then when I ask her about her day, she doesn't reveal them because it's not fresh on her mind. So until you're intentional about your questioning, sometimes you don't learn things, right? Not necessarily intentional about your kids not telling you, but because it just wasn't fresh on their mind. And then just not letting them feel ashamed when they ask you a question that might be embarrassing, like creating a safe space of you're not in trouble because this happened to you or because you're curious about it, but that it's safe and you can ask me and we can always talk through it, I think is really important.
Yeah, because I believe that kids are seeking answers. They have questions. They're going to
Yeah.
seek answers. And so if parents aren't, if parents aren't the ones that can provide those answers, they're going to find them somewhere. Like whatever questions, whatever things that the parents are facing and dealing with and thinking about, most kids are also having those same questions. Maybe they don't fully understand them, but they're having those thoughts and questions. I know so many kids that have political opinions, but they don't know any of the issues. They just have the political opinions.
Yeah.
And so this is what, I would say, and I would challenge parents to. And I can say that because I'm not a parent, so it's a lot easier for me to say that. But this is what I believe. If your kids aren't asking you those questions, they're finding the answers somewhere.
Right.
And so if, they're not asking you, if you're not cultivating that relationship early, it's going to get more difficult. And they're going to find the answers, and it's most likely going to be whatever they're watching on YouTube, whatever their friends are showing them. And so just a challenge from one non-parent to the parents. Hey, cultivating that relationship is important because they're seeking answers.
And I would say, as part of rWorld, that's why we have small group leaders, especially in the elementary rooms, and they have those small groups, and especially at South Fork, because we have so many more children in the elementary room, we separate them out by gender so that, because the girls' questions and the boys' questions are going to be totally different.
Vastly different.
And, the girls' questions are going to be all about friendships mostly, and the boys are going to act like nothing is happening, but then they will share some random thing.
Yeah.
And the small group leader has to be able to answer those questions. And so it's just, once again, it's being the safe place.
Yeah.
And so the small group leaders being part of their lives, and I know the small group leaders, there's some small group leaders that have been with the same kids since they were 3 that are here. And so, like, they know the families and they know the ins and outs. Or we have one small group leader that the child lost their dad and mom, honestly. And he shows up to all the birthday parties. He shows up to all the cookouts, and he wants to be the other person in that child's life. So when he has questions about God or life and how it relates to his faith, that he can be there.
That's
and so that's just huge. And those things happen behind the scenes that people don't necessarily know.
Yeah, that's not something you're like actively cultivating. That's just people seeing a need, wanting to pour into the future generations, the next generation, the church of today, and saying, I want to have an impact. But one thing, so we've talked about it, it's been mentioned quite a bit about like resources that rWorld provides. That's something I've always admired about rWorld is you have resources for parents, whatever they're facing, whatever they're thinking. And so I'd love for both of you to share maybe just some resources, whether it's resources available through rWorld or just your own personal like resources that you're using to help lead your kids closer to Jesus, to help answer questions that the kids may have. Or maybe it's just like my daughter's 6, like when she's 16, what is she going to be facing? And so I'd love for you to just share like some stuff that you're using.
Well, REVO has provided a couple of times since I've been at REVO in the last 2 years, classes for parents, which have been phenomenal. So that's a support. Knowing that when I get there with my kid, which might be sooner than I want, I have lots of notes I can refer back to. But honestly, the biggest resource for me has been Josh and Amy and just the support systems in the people I've met through our groups and stuff. But outside of that, even though those are fantastic, I'm listening to a book on Audible right now called The Anxiety Generation, which has been, have you heard of it? It's been phenomenal just as I move into later elementary school when she wants a phone, and just knowing how to navigate that for better brain development and to set her up for more mental health success. And then I read a book when I first had children called Loving Our Kids on Purpose. That was really fantastic and about parenting with like a gospel-centered mindset. That I found to be really helpful. And then outside of books and reading, because not everyone has time for that, Yippee TV is a faith-based networking program, kind of like the Netflix of Christian TV shows, which I find great when YouTube Kids is not always great and sends my kids to, I mean, I fell down the YouTube Kids rabbit hole and had to quickly take it away when my kids were, it recommends things that it shouldn't be recommending to 3-year-olds. So we had to find new systems, and Yippee TV has been great for that. It's only like $4 a month too. So much cheaper than all the other options.
Yeah, already paying streaming.
Yeah, exactly. So
and it's much easier to pay the $4 and not deal with the repercussions.
100%, and feel much more comfortable with what my kids are watching, and reinforcing the things they're learning in church, which is great. And then I already said that one. Our groups and the parents that I've met at REVO and the support systems, if it's not currently on the resource wall, it probably has been before, it will be again, and you can always ask for it. I've shared with other friends who don't come to REVO, when I saw, I think it was last month, anxiety stuff and I have friends with first graders who have lots of anxiety and depression, and I saw it on the wall and I was taking pictures like, can I grab some of these for you guys? There's some really great resources with emotion wheels and I mean lots of things to support parents with their kids and their faith, but also supporting their just well-being and helping create happy kids who learn to love Jesus.
So the resource wall, so every month I change out the topic for the resource wall. But the resources, if they're printable, they're on our website. So if you go to rWorld Kids, and then there's a tab that says Parent Resources, there's blogs, there's articles, there's the links to the books that we put up there.
And what we can do is we can link that in the description of this video, so that you can just click straight to it and you can jump right on it.
So there's different topics that are up there with all the different resources, how to have conversations about leading your kid to Christ. And like I said, there's blogs, there's videos, depending on how you intake information. Because I know that not everybody has time to sit and open up a book, but maybe you get it an Audible and listen to it. Or there's a quick video on how to talk to your kid about X, Y, and Z. But those are always there. And then there's just different resources. Like this month on the resource wall, it's not necessarily like a topical thing, but it's like there's the cards that I was talking about, and then like scripture, it's called Scripture Scratch Off, because who doesn't love a scratch off if you're a kid? But like underneath each one of these little stickers, scratch off things, is a Bible verse and then a prayer. So it's just something that's short and simple to do at your kitchen table or take with you. And then the kids can fight over who scratches it off, which would be at my house, who scratches it off. But we try to, but personally in our house, Shepherding a Child's Heart was a big book that we read before. It's an old book, but it's a good book. Just to cultivate the heart for Christ versus shaping the behavior, because the behavior will change in a child if the heart is there. And that's the whole motivation of that book. And then Habits of the Household is literally, it's just awesome. It talks about the different rhythms of life and how to prioritize God and talk about God during all those different aspects of the rhythm of life. And it's on the website. So, and then the other one for a little bit older kids, but if you have a kid going into middle school, it's really good, is access.org. And they have a culture translator, which is great for, if you haven't had a middle schooler yet, they have a different language.
100%.
And so that's a huge thing. But also, every week as an rWorld parent, you get an email. And in that email, there's a link to something. Whether it's some cultural thing that is addressed, that we're like, as parents sometimes we think doesn't exist. But it's for sure, like, if you ask your kids about it, they will then sing the song, and you're like, what in the world are you singing? We didn't talk about this at home at all. To, how to share your faith and how to different tools to use.
That just makes me think of, there's a YouTube video, the Skibbity Toilet.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
If you've never seen it, I promise you, your kids have seen it.
I
have seen it.
Our kids hadn't seen it, but they knew the song.
Oh.
And
I haven't heard of this.
You'll just have to look it up. The kids know it. And
it was the #1 YouTube short for last year.
Oh.
Yep. And it's exactly what you think.
Special.
But before we close out our time here, I'd love to just ask your thoughts on like how you wish parents would come and partner with you, because we can have all these resources, we can have the ability, we can seek to love the kid and help them come to Jesus, and we can do all the things, but deep down, if you're in rWorld, you're spending an hour a week every week if the kid comes every single Sunday, and we usually don't even have church all 52 Sundays and vacations, and so there's only a small amount of time we can be with them. I'd love to ask, just before we close out this episode, how do you wish that parents could better partner with rWorld? Because you can have resources, we can have, options and abilities for them, but is there anything you wish that parents could do, or that you wish you could share with them of saying, hey, we would love to partner with you better?
So one thing that we do, if you go to the website or the app, also there is what they do on a Sunday. So like if you miss a Sunday, then the so-and-so show is on the app or website, and Ollie is on the website. And if you don't know who what those things are, just ask your kids, because they will know. And so, if you miss Sunday, then those resources are there, so then you can have the conversations with your kids. And, because sometimes your kids are sick, but it keeps the routine of church is important. The other thing is there's no dumb questions.
Yeah.
We're here for all the questions that you have. The odds are we have either helped someone through it before, or help. In my house, we have 4 kids, and so we help a lot of different aspects, because they're all for different children. And so we're here to support you. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think alongside that, like sharing your wins with us, sharing your wins with your small group leader, like so-and-so had a baseball game today and they won, or they have one coming up, or, or hey, we're really struggling with sleeping at night, just anything that's going on in your life, I think share it with us, because we want to come alongside you and help you with it. And I know for me as a parent, it is really helpful when I find other people in the same struggle and we can struggle together, because we're not meant to struggle alone, and it really helps come out the other side, and I end up finding help along the way. Yeah. So just share all the things with us so we can come along and celebrate and help you through it.
No, I think that's good. I think a lot of times we end up feeling like we're the only one struggling with insert anything. And you're not. Whether you're a parent, whether you don't even have kids, whatever you are facing in life, you're not the only one facing that.
Yep.
And so we're not meant to do life alone. That's one of the big mottos of REVO. We're not meant to do life alone. No. And so share, and you'll find out that, hey, people are there for you. But as we close out this episode, I just want to give you, a quick minute of, is there any advice that you'd love to give to, maybe there's a parent watching, or maybe there's people that are like, I don't have kids, but I'd love to pour into the next generation. Like, any advice that you would have that you'd want to give to them?
My advice is just to be there for them, to show up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our shirts say, I said yes to the next generation.
Yep.
And it's true. So if we don't have people that are willing to say yes, and we don't have people willing to show up for these kids when they have a bad day, or when things don't make sense, and the things that kids go through sometimes are really, really hard. And so they need people to be there. Statistics show that kids that continue their faith past 18, which, you have oftentimes kids grow up in church, then they go to college and they go on their own and their faith goes away. And the kids that keep their faith have a person that is not in their family that has invested and is there for them.
Yeah.
That is literally the #1 piece of that. And so if you don't know your kid's small group leader and you don't know them, as a parent, get to know that teacher, because they might share something with that small group leader that they won't share with you. And it's a team. And so oftentimes I always tell parents, like, pride, get your pride out of the way. Your kid is not, like, if your kid makes a bad decision, it's not your fault.
Yep.
Because everyone has their own decisions to make. And so what we want to do is we want them to be lifelong followers of Jesus, and we want them to develop that faith. And so if we get out of our own way as parents, then we can help create this faith for them long term and come alongside them.
Yep.
And that's the goal, is that we want these kids to follow Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would just like to challenge anyone who's not currently serving in rWorld to sign up. You don't have to have kids. You don't have to be good with kids.
Yep.
All we need you to do is to come and love on kids, right? And show them who Jesus is. And honestly, some of our best volunteers who are the best with kids are people who never thought they would be good at it, because they just show up with such a pure heart of just wanting to hang out with kids. So if you aren't currently doing that, I really want to challenge you to, because I think it'll be really rewarding for both of you and the lifelong connection you're going to make. So
That's true.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. I appreciate you guys coming on today. I know for both of you personally that this is not necessarily your forte, but I know I've learned a lot. And so, hey, I appreciate you guys being on the video. I appreciate y'all watching, and hopefully you learned something as well. All those resources that were mentioned, we'll drop it in the description, but make sure you join us next week as we move from the younger kids to we talk to the student volunteers, looking at middle school and high school. We'll see you next time.